Immigration. It is a conversation that we are all having. And I think that a lot of folks right out of the gate, we knew right after the administration took office that there was going to be there would be a lot of people who were going to be in large fear. And that's certainly unfortunately happened. And it's been the thing that we've all been concerned about. And this conversation is something that we're going to have to all deal with in one way or the other. But one of the things that I'm thankful for and that we're blessed to have is an expert in the space who's been with us before, prior to the election and right after the election, and that's attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, is the owner, CEO of the Lincoln-Goldfinch Law Office in Austin, Texas. And of course, she's also the co-host of Law Moms Out Loud. Good morning, Kate. Welcome back to Choose Views.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. I won't ask the generic question, how you doing, because I know you're doing great. And what I mean by that in terms of what you're doing is great work, and people need to know about the work that you're doing. But it's been a while since we had you on, a few weeks, and I know that you've been super busy since the administration took over. So I'll ask you the broad question that I know you've got some specifics to. What are you seeing on a national level? What are you seeing in some of the top 10 markets or the top 5 markets that Holman is targeting? And where are you putting a lot of your effort and energy right now?
Well, certainly we're seeing the border closure. All asylum processing has been closed. All refugee processing has been closed, except for, by order of the Trump administration, white Afrikaners from South Africa. So if anyone's looking for racism in their policies, there's a pretty glaring example. And then on the interior enforcement front, of course, we're seeing heightened enforcement actions. People are getting picked up. Families are getting torn apart here in the U.S. Detention is at capacity. The detention beds that we have are at capacity, and there are rumors of massive detention encampments being shopped by the Trump administration with, private and potentially military contractors. So I think we're going to see a lot more on the interior detention front. There also was a recent announcement that they're sending 3,000 more troops down to the border, even though the border is very, very quiet. And that includes combat troops from high-level military units who are just essentially sitting at the border doing not much of anything.
Isn't that wasteful? Isn't that, I don't know if it's fraudulent, but isn't it an abuse of our resources? I mean, waste, fraud, and abuse seems to be the words that keep coming out of their mouth, to have, our military going to the border, the southern border, and not doing anything that's necessarily effective.
I think that it's starting to become clear that waste, fraud, and abuse means...
So you were talking about the impact of waste, fraud, and abuse, specifically with these folks being down at the border, these military men and women having to, go and, for lack of better words, do nothing. We'll talk about that.
Well, and what I was saying is that I think it's becoming clear that the definition of waste, fraud, and abuse under the Trump administration is anything that helps regular people, but if there's something that helps Trump or wealthy people, then that isn't considered waste, fraud, and abuse. And I've long argued that claiming that there's an invasion at the border or that there's a risk of drug trafficking, human trafficking, all of the things that they say immigrants are doing isn't actually true. But making people afraid of that is very helpful to Trump. It makes him much more powerful and have more support.
Yeah, because it's playing the fear game. It's the brown people that are coming to get your stuff, and et cetera, et cetera. It's the same old narrative, different day. Mm-hmm. So, Kate, what are some of the numbers that you're seeing right now? And I know that this is a big part of your work in terms of the data that's there. How, since inauguration until, let's just say, the end of the last month, what are the actual legal detainments, or the people that have legally been for what many are calling the illegal behavior or bad behavior, have been detained? Do you have any data there?
They're being very secretive about that. So what will happen in a jurisdiction is everyone will anecdotally know that there are a lot of enforcement actions happening. We see a lot of stories, we get a lot of phone calls, but ICE will not release figures about how many people they're actually detaining. We do know that the detention, there'll be leaks from the press that the detention facilities are at max capacity. I attended a meeting with ICE leadership, and they referenced bed capacity. That's certainly something that's on their mind. And there's, other reports have shown that in order to carry out the deportation of the undocumented population, which they say they're going to do, it will require a 600% increase in ICE activity from where we are now. So I think all of us should be prepared for a really steep increase in enforcement activities, but it's going to have to go beyond what they're doing now, which is utilizing DHS resources, and then they'll pull in some other agency resources. Like here in Austin, DHS brought in the DEA one weekend to carry out some actions. But unfortunately, I think what we're going to see next is the utilization of private military contractor resources to detain and deport people. And that's, they haven't announced that they're doing that. That's not anything official, but there are rumblings of that. And that would certainly make sense that they would do something like that to carry out their plan.
Will they bloat to their budget and then pull resources from other parts of the federal budget, or both?
Oh, certainly. Certainly. I mean, the DHS has an insane budget. It's over $100 billion per year. It's the largest budget of any other federal law enforcement agency, and actually all of them combined are less than the DHS budget. So they have a lot of...
Say that again. Kate, say that again so people who didn't catch that understand what that means. Say that again, if you will.
Sure. The Department of Homeland Security has the largest law enforcement budget compared to all of the other budgets even combined. It's over $100 billion is what they have to work with. And they obviously are putting all of those resources toward enforcement actions. And it certainly, I think, will be pulling from other, congressional appropriations to enforcement. It's, as we can see from the cutoff of aid to Ukraine and other actions, the administration is unconcerned with how Congress has directed the money to be spent. So, I mean, all bets are off, really, in terms of where they're going to find the money.
So that, again, is another example of waste. That's an astonishing number. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at that and you look at areas of our country that, as it relates to, if we want to call it, national security, we could spend that money to improve and ramp up and strengthen other parts of the country. They could, am I wrong? And I'm just grabbing a percentage. They could cut that budget by 20% and redirect that money to areas that are going to actually improve the lives of citizens that need that federal support. But it's about making brown skinned people the bad guy.
That's absolutely what it's about. I mean, their racism just shows up all over in their policies and their actions. And it's very, very clear that they're after, dark brown-skinned immigrants in their enforcement actions. It's one of the things that, I don't know, it's like I want to use the word helpful. It's not helpful, but it's clarifying when they are so blatant in their racism. Because I think sometimes there's people like me who are advocates and activists, and probably a lot of your listeners who are we understand that immigration is what makes this country special. And then there's people on the other end of the spectrum who are just going to be anti-immigrant no matter what. And then there's a lot of people in the middle who try to look for reason and good in policies. And when the administration is so blatantly racist, I think it's helpful for that middle ground of people to see the reality of what's going on and have the eyes opened. And because otherwise there's a lot of confusion about, well, surely there must be a reason for this. So that's the only good I think that can come out of sort of this behavior, this blatant behavior, is everybody's eyes get a little bit open to what's actually going on. And there's still going to be a lot of people who are racist and xenophobic who are supportive of these actions. But at least the camp of people who are opposed to what's happening might grow a little bit because we're all very aware of why this is happening.
And that's the whole part of people pulling their heads out of the sand and talking about this and recognizing that, you've only been, not you, Kate, but, somebody that's looking at this, it's only been here 2 generations. So you come from a family of immigrants yourself. And let's, do we want to dig into your family's immigration background to see if you've been here, if you got to stay here by, in accordance to all the rules. And that's where a lot of people put their head in the sand. They don't want to look into that. It's sort of like the conversation around enslavement. People want to say, that was years ago. Let that go. Let's just, come on, people. Let's move forward. And immigration has a similar sort of head in the sand conversation. Oh, my family's been here since 1955. Okay. How did they get here? And what did they do? And was it done properly? That's a conversation that a lot of, candidly, American immigrants, European immigrants don't want to have, because they know that there could be some dots that don't necessarily connect in that conversation. Is that a fair statement?
Sure. And I also think a lot of these people don't understand the actual solidarity that they have with the immigrants of today. When you think about, really, unless someone is 100% descended from slaves or natives, they are, an immigrant themselves. And if they have any, Chinese, Asian, Italian, Jewish, Eastern European, German background whatsoever, then they have been the immigrants of today in the past. They have been vilified, talked about as if they are rodents. People talk about, killing them just because they're coming here. And so if there's someone who's, proud Italian, proud German, and looks and points the finger at the, Venezuelan immigrants of today, well, you're actually the same. It's just a different time. And I hope that people remember that when they hear all of this rhetoric. That
your last 5 sentences, Kate, needs to be a 30-second or 1-minute spot. And I'm sure the producers here, the engineers, are going to be able to help me pull that out. More people need to hear what you just said, because that is the unfiltered truth about immigration in the country. And you and I can get even further into the nuts and bolts and the data, but that is the human part that oftentimes it gets missed because of the distraction. Let's look at how these people are doing all these bad things, and they're the criminals, and they're this and they're that. However, what you just said is probably the most human part of this conversation. If people just pull their heads out of the sand and recognize their own history in this country is less than 60 years. If we do it in generational numbers, it's, maybe 70 years, but not nearly as long as the other folks that have been here for 5 or 6, 7 generations. So I'm glad you were able to highlight that. Let me ask you this question, and it's about legal recourse. What legal recourse is out there for the folks that are being detained incorrectly or improperly? And I know that this is where you really lean in and are the expert.
Well, the strongest thing I want people to know is that if you've been here for longer than 2 years, or you have a fear of returning to your country, there's a way to stop a fast-track deportation. They can only deport someone who's been here for less than 2 years, and if that person's not claiming asylum. So anyone who's undocumented, just remember that if you get picked up, you have the right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, and you should not sign any documents without first reviewing them with an attorney. And if you've been here for longer than 2 years, you can pause the deportation and fight your case. So that's the thing that I want people to know, because it's really stressful in these moments when you're being detained or you're being processed and you want to cooperate and tell them what they want to hear or sign the document they're putting before you. And everybody needs to assert their own rights in those first moments when they're interacting with law enforcement, because the attorneys aren't around at those moments. So everybody needs to understand this stuff. And secondarily, there are going to be a lot of abuses. Of course, there are going to be arrests without probable cause. There's going to be racial profiling. All of that is going to go down. And the best thing we can do when that's occurring is is witness it well. So take notes, see who the agents are, what outfits are they wearing, how many are there, to record it with your phone if you can. And then remember that it's after the fact that we can bring lawsuits and complaints. And there are civil rights attorneys who are ready, able, and willing to help people who have been subjected to this stuff. But you've got to get the good evidence while it's happening and just stay quiet, assert your rights, and get a lawyer down the line.
Kate, last question, as always, we're going to have you back because this is an ongoing conversation. And what you just said, I want to be able to continue to give you the space to tell people what to do and how to sustain themselves if this happens. So that question, that leads me to this question, and I have to ask you this, as your buddy in Chicago. How are you sustaining yourself? How are you keeping things together?
I spend a lot of time with my family, and I think any social justice worker probably knows this lesson, is that when you're helping people in their lives, you don't have responsibility for that person's past or their future. All you have is responsibility for that sliver of time in which you are helping them. And so that's what I do. I do my best in the moments when I'm doing my work, and then I set it down because I don't carry responsibility for the rest of it. I used to try to do that when I was early in my career. It almost took me down. So now, it's like I take responsibility for what I have, and then that's it. That's it. That's all I've got.
Yeah, that's big. That's huge. And that's one of those, you had to learn that one in real time as your career has gone on. And we are grateful to you for the work that you do, Kate. And that's why I made it a point of saying we want to have you on so that people can hear and know that you're out there and how to find you, and know that there's a warrior doing the work that you're doing. As we wrap up, let folks know once again how to find you if they want to try to get involved or just send you some good vibe.
Thanks. I'm on all the socials. My name is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. Lincoln like the president, Goldfinch like the bird.
There you go. Kate, thanks for being with us this morning. Stay strong, sister, and I will be here for you as well. We look forward to having you back. Take care. Bye now. There you go, guys. When we talk to Kate, it always requires me to take a deep breath because this is a woman that is fighting the good fight. She truly is. Follow her on the socials. Do whatever you can to show her that you support her. Send her a good vibe because she's out there, as I say oftentimes, sleeves rolled up and elbows deep.